Good morning, everybody, and I hope you're enjoying your Saturday so far. This is MYG Jeffy T 3285, and I just wanted to make this video real quickly about how now, with all the drama that's been put to the side involving the Brooklyn Nets, with all the nonsense that has been going on with this franchise for the past month and a half plus, with all the ridiculous rumors that were going on about this player's going here, about this player's going there, about so and so, blah, 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 blah. All that drama that now has been pretty much squashed going around this Brooklyn Nets team. I actually have a lot of confidence that this Nets team can do something this year and can potentially make it to the NBA Finals and be a team that could win an NBA championship this year because of the fact of the talent they have on this roster. Now, I know one of the biggest issues when it comes to any single sport, especially involving the NBA too, just like the NFL, but especially with the NBA as well. Injuries always can be the type of factor that can always squash a season and a team's hope for any franchise going forward. So, as a Brooklyn Nets fan, I believe that this team has the talent with the roster they have put together. And that's including a bunch of second-year players like David Duke Jr., Kessler Edwards, Deron Sharp, and of course Cam Thomas. That these guys are going to be able to develop into their second year, and they're going to be the type of productive bench players that we're going to need, especially a guy like Cam Thomas, who I believe could be a sixth man on this roster because of the fact that he's a guy that can score at least 20 points on any given night when he has the ball in his hands. And he won't have to do that because of the fact of the players that we have ahead of him. But Cam Thomas is a guy that you can say has the talent that can go out there and he could put up points if the Brooklyn Nets ever need it. And then there's some other players on this bench. I mean, David Duke Jr. is that important hustle player that you always want on your team. He does the little things, the intangibles. He goes out there, he's going to rebound, he's going to play really good defense on the wing. He's going to be a guy that's going to even be able to drive to the basket and get you some occasional points. So I like to see what his development is going to be in his second year. Kessler Edwards has that length on the outside where he can be able to stand up against other smaller guards and forwards on the outside. He's got that 6'9 frame and 6'9", 6'10 wingspan on the outside. Plus, he's a guy that can also hit the three. He's not exactly the strongest when it comes to his shooting, but when it comes to his defense and his three-point shooting at least, he's pretty solid over there. So I think Kessler Edwards is another guy. You have Deron Sharp, who's going to be going into his second year. He's a center on this team. He can maybe develop as a banger on the bottom and be able to use his size because he's got good size down low with 6'10 and about 250, 255 pounds over there. Put on a little bit more weight, and he could be a guy that can maybe use his size to be able to take advantage of some of those smaller centers out there, as well as he has some decent quickness. He's just got to develop the rest of his inside game. But he gives me a little bit of hope. And like I mentioned with Thomas, Cam Thomas, I think, is a guy that's going to be able to shoot the lights out. He's just got to improve on the defensive side of the ball if he's going to get the type of minutes that maybe he's looking for in his second year. Then, of course, the rest of the team, I think the Nets have three guys on this team that could be absolute sharpshooters from the outside and guys that no team wants to deal with when it comes to three-point shooting. And that, of course, is Patty Mills, who just got re-signed in the offseason, Seth Curry, who, of course, the Brooklyn Nets brought into the team last year during the Ben Simmons James Harden trade. He was a factor last year towards the end before he unfortunately was banged up due to an ankle injury that he suffered towards the end of the season. And of course Joe Harris, who we all know is arguably one of, if not the best three-point shooter in the NBA. It's just unfortunate that at the beginning of last year he suffered an ankle injury and it pretty much took away his entire season. But we know when he's out there out there, he's a threat at the three-point line. So you have Joe Harris, Patty Mills, and Seth Curry that are going to be three types of guys. They're going to go out there and they're going to be guys that you have to make sure you have to watch at all times because each one of those three can go out there and hit the three-point shot when it's available. So I'm really happy about that. I mean, there's just a lot of players. Edward Sumner. He's another guy that we brought in, as well as T.J. Warren, especially T.J. Warren. But Edward Sumner is a guard that we brought in from Indiana. He's been dealing with some injury issues, but he's also another guy that could be a 3-and-D guy out there on the basketball court. He might not play a lot, but he's a guy that we brought in, gave him a chance, pretty much on a one-year deal to see if we can maybe rehab some of his ability that he had. he's a solid player that can come off the bench and give the Nets some scoring too, as well as some solid defense. And then T.J. Warren, I think, is one of the wild cards on this team because T.J. Warren is a hell of a basketball player when he actually is healthy, and the problem is the past couple of years, T.J. Warren has just not been able to stay on the basketball court because of various injuries that he's been dealing with over the past couple of years, including the fact he was dealing with a knee injury last year, and that's the reason why he missed so much time during the NBA season. So I'm really curious to see what TJ Warren can do. But in 2020, if anybody missed it, this guy was a 20-point scorer consistently, especially when they were playing in the bubble towards the when the NBA playoffs a couple of years ago. So if you can get anything close to the TJ Warren that you got in 2020 and before that, the Nets have got themselves a really good player as another guy that could be a potential sixth man of the year or a sixth man on this roster. So I'm curious to see what TJ Warren and Edwards Sumner can do. And then, of course, I got to go with Nicholas Claxton, who I've been hyping this kid up, who after what he showed towards in the playoffs last year, yes, I know the Nets got swept 4-0, but Nicholas Claxton, to me, opened up the most eyes because this guy was finally start to, play the type of defense and get the type of rebounding that the Brooklyn Nets were looking for down low in the post. And going into his third year, it looks like going into his fourth year, it looks like Nicholas Claxton is going to be the type of center that the Nets might be able to build around when it comes to future assets because he just has to put a little bit more size on his frame. He does have that really skinny frame on his body, but if he's able to continue to be a good solid rim protector, which he was averaging at least 2 or 3 blocks a game last year in the playoffs, and he was becoming a guy that was getting consistently 7 to 8, maybe sometimes 10 rebounds a game, and of course he was part of some amazing lobs that they had, and he was starting to score around the basket too. So Nicholas Claxton is another guy that I would say is a wild card when it comes to this Brooklyn Nets team. So I'm excited about him. And then, of course, we get to the big three. It all starts with these guys. It all starts with these 3 guys when it comes to the Nets being any type of successful team this year. And that's Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and Ben Simmons. We all know about the drama this past offseason. Kevin Durant requested a trade at the beginning of July, and it looked like that the Nets were going to try to get rid of him because they just did not want to deal with Kevin Durant's saga anymore. But of course the Nets were able to reconcile that, and Kevin Durant is now part of the Brooklyn Nets team going forward. Same thing with Kyrie Irving, where there were a lot of rumors that Kyrie Irving was looking to try to get traded to the Los Angeles Lakers, but nothing materialized at all, and Kyrie Irving is still here with the Brooklyn Nets. And Ben Simmons, of course, we made the mid-season trade last year during the trade deadline to pick up Ben Simmons for James Harden along with Seth Curry. But Ben Simmons is the key because there's not a lot of players in this league that are 6'10" and have the type of wingspan and defensive prowess that Ben Simmons does. So if Ben Simmons can find a way to make his way back onto the basketball court, he's right now coming back after back surgery that he recently just had this past off season, but he's supposed to be 100% by the beginning of training camp. And if you can get Ben Simmons back, and if his mental mindset is anywhere back to where it needs to be, the Brooklyn Nets are going to be in very good shape going into this season. So that's why I feel as confident as I do about this Brooklyn Nets team compared to what I felt previously, not even like a few days ago with this whole Kevin Durant saga and Kyrie Irving stuff. Now I know the head coach is a little bit of a question mark, but at the same time, I'm sure Steve Nash is going to try to find a way to make sure he learns from all his mistakes. And going into his third year as a head coach, you figure and you hope that he's going to be able to, learn from his mistakes and going to try to be the head coach that the Brooklyn Nets are hoping he could be. And he's going to be able to become more of a better in-game coach when it comes to the decisions that need to be made and what players should be on the court depending on the opponent you're facing and what players should be on the bench. He's going to be able to make those in-game adjustments a lot better than he did in the previous 2 years. You hope you can do that, and I applaud Joe Tsai and Sean Marks for the toughness they showed this past offseason where they did not bow down to Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving's demands when it came to trade demands. So I appreciate that from my owner as well as my GM, that they did not bow down at all from those requests and that they held strong. And now the Brooklyn Nets, going into this 2022-2023 NBA season, have a legit shot to be a team that could go into the playoffs, go on a long playoff run, and potentially win an NBA championship with the type of roster that they put together this past offseason. And I cannot forget, of course, Royce O'Neal, who the Brooklyn Nets were able to acquire during the beginning of the offseason in a trade from the Utah Jazz for a first round pick. But Royce O'Neal, he's another 3-and-D guy that you could throw in there. The trade did not make sense when, of course, you heard the Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving rumors. But now with the fact that those guys are going to be staying, Royce O'Neal is going to be another piece that you could throw in there, along with the TJ Warren, along with an Edward Sumner, that you could throw in there as a 3-and-D guy. He's going to play great defense along the small forward and power forward position, and he's going to be able to hit you occasional three-point shots going forward. So I think that was a good deal now, especially with the fact that this Nets team is in a win-now mode going forward. So that's just some of my little things that I want to say about this Brooklyn Nets, on how pessimistic myself and some of the other Nets fans were during this entire offseason because of the stuff that was going on around Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, because of the circus-like atmosphere that was going on with the GM and the owner and the head coach and the players on the team. A lot has changed since Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant now have retracted their trade demands, and they have now 1,000% stuck forward with the Nets' plans so far this year. So it's a lot of optimism now going with this team into this season, and it's not out of the question with the roster this team has put together that the Nets could be a team that could win an NBA championship going forward, and it's not out of the question that the Brooklyn Nets could be NBA champions by season end. So that's just my little video I wanted to make about the Brooklyn Nets and how the optimism now is flowing around this team after a lot of pessimism going on before. So if you guys like this video, please hit the like button below. Subscribe if you haven't already to NYGJeffyT 3285 for more breaking news updates, roster and injury news surrounding the Brooklyn Nets, as well as the New York Giants, WWE Wrestling, New York Mets, and food for thought. Turn on the bell for notifications on when the next video or short's going to be dropping on the channel surrounding the Brooklyn Nets. And let me know in the comment section what you think about the Brooklyn Nets in terms of their roster makeup they have right now, in terms of Steve Nash going into his third year as the head coach of the Brooklyn Nets, Sean Marks as the GM, and Joe Tsai holding strong when it comes to the trade demands of the Brooklyn Nets superstars earlier this offseason, and what your true expectations, your true and honest expectations are for the Brooklyn Nets going into the 2022-2023 NBA season. I thank you very much, everybody. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon as well, and let's go Brooklyn Nets. It's a Nets world, and we're all just living in it.